Okay, here I have a Orion VH2, or 2B in fact it is. I think there is a slight difference between the VH2 and the 2B. And I've already patched this one up quickly. The actual sensor lamp in it was blown, so I've got like a little substitute there just to get it going. And the pinch roller's in poor condition. Naturally it needed a belt kit. I did quickly put a, I think I pinched one out of the old Sharp VC381 mechanism I had, which was pretty well on its way out anyway, but it was better than the one in this. And it did run and give a picture, but with some wow in it, which I think I've got a recording of that somewhere. I did lose part of the original video I took of it. Now these are a top load machine, but they do have some similarities to Sharp machines, but they definitely are a different mechanism in these. I was under the impression, I think someone told me, that they had the same mechanism as a Sharp, and at first glance they look exactly the same as Sharp. Same looking idler, the idler tyre fits, you've got the sensor lamp, tape guides, heads, everything looks pretty similar. But I did actually compare it to the VC381 mechanism, and there are some differences I think in this lower deck part, and I think even the drum and stuff has Orion written on it, but I'd say there might have been some sort of licensing type agreement with it between the companies for the mechanisms. Looks like Orion made their own, but they are certainly very similar to the Sharps in many ways. I think the motors are different in these. How do I get that off? And I think, yeah, if we look at the capstan motor and stuff, it's got Orion on it, quite a bit different, but at the same time somewhat similar at first glance. Yeah, got Orion on there. I think this head drum unit's different. It's actually got Orion cast into it, but I wouldn't be surprised if this company actually used the development of the Sharp ones rather than developing their own mechanism. I used to have a VH3, which is the top loading version of these. Still had a very similar mechanism, same with the 608 idler tyre, the SL50 sensor lamp. I think that was all that was wrong with it. I bought it not working, and from memory it just needed those two things in it, and it went for years after that. Looks like, yeah, I've just patched up the wires there. That's what I did. I just used some random lamp I had, patched it into the original wiring there, but I've since bought an actual VPR 59. This is from Wagner Electronics pinch roll. It's the same as the Sharp 381. Got some SL50 sensor lamps, and I've got a belt kit here somewhere. I think it was this VBK84. It's the only one I've got with the right size idler tyre in it, I believe. I can't actually remember. I did buy a belt kit for a Sanyo Beta machine, which would be that one, for a Toshiba 80 series, and I honestly can't remember what the other belt kit was for. It'll come clear though, I'm sure. So I think this 84, I'll double check it, but that looks, it's got like a 608 idler, and it's got the same sort of size capstan belt, big flat one. Looks like this has got a counter belt, which would be that thin one. And what would the other belt be? It doesn't have a loading belt as such. Oh yeah, it'll be the belt down here, be the one that runs the master cam. Obviously it doesn't have a belt to open the cassette housing, so I think I might get that cassette housing out, and then I'll turn the power back off. I assume there's screws down the bottom here by the look of it. Probably don't even really need to remove it, but yeah, to get the idler out I think I will. So I can already see that the bit of plastic where the idler is over the idler motor, or real motor, is not the same as a Sharp, and Sharp certainly never made a top loader. I don't know if they ever made a single top loading. There were some really early machines that might have been top loading, the 6000 series or something. Now, how does this come out? Something's holding that in there. What have we got holding that in there? Just got to unclip a little thing there maybe. Oh, maybe it's a bit more complicated than that. So that's not a real good start. I don't think I've actually ever worked on these VH2s before. I'd be surprised if I never saw one, but they were a very rare machine. For some reason, I'm Orion machines. The VH3 I had was the only VH3 I think I ever. Actually, I might have seen one more at a place that used to buy a lot of second-hand equipment. I think they may have had one, but very rare to see the Orion VCRs, these early ones around. They sold a lot of their little TV video units. It must somehow come out. But it's got this funny big lever hanging off the bottom of it, which is a bit odd. Maybe you've got to put this in a particular position. It doesn't seem to affect anything. Take this little silver bit out down here. And that, whoops, of course the screw's falling down inside it now. I should have grabbed that first, I guess. Oh yeah, that's got it out. So that's a bit of a weirdo design. It's got this oddball piece hanging off the bottom here, which clipped under another metal bit. And I bet that screw fell right down inside it somewhere. Of course it did. And it wasn't the screw, because I've got that there. I had something fall. So I thought, oh, maybe it's just that metal bit dropping. Oh, it's clicked across, so maybe that's all. Oh, it's probably just that. I just assumed the worst. So it's got a great big solenoid here. A lot of dust in this thing, like most top loaders. They did actually tend to get a bit more dust in the top loaders. So I'm giving that a good clean up. Even dust on top of the head drum. Try and blow as much of that out as possible. Yeah, it's actually got Orion stamped into the mech there, just again to prove that it's definitely not a Sharp, and this plastic bit's quite different. And the plastic lamp holder's different, but we've got the same little double set of brakes here. One of them's looking a bit messy. Yeah, different spring and stuff I think on the back tension arm. Different end sensors obviously because it's top load. Yeah, head's quite different. But the general layout with this sort of double height mechanism and everything, all pretty similar to the Sharp. So as soon as it just comes off, much like the Sharp one, looks like it. And I assume we've got to drop the real motor, much like the Sharp. Remove this spring. Process should be very similar to Sharp, except this motor, well I guess that'll be the same. How long is that belt now, Kit? Yeah, probably about right. Take that, well that's not even a counter belt in this one because there's no counter, or it's probably an electronic counter. Yeah, it's got a counter reset here, so this has got an electronic counter rather than a mechanical one coming off this piece. We can get that pinch roller out from memory, that was pretty bad. Cracks and stuff appearing in that. Yeah, top's all sort of cracking. Oh yeah, bottom's corroded. Often if that aluminium's corroded, it's because there's a wheelie stuff coming out of the pinch roller. Put that to one side. I guess I can put the new one of those in even. So I might just give that a quick dusting around there. I'll have to put that screw back in there so I don't lose it. Because I'll try and get some access to under the mechanism now. Try not to lose any of these parts. No idea what access is like underneath these machines. There's something loose in there for sure. Oh yeah, looks like oh yeah, that's right. I did have the bottom off this originally to put the capstan belt in, so it can't be too bad. I'll just leave this standing upright. So it's got a big plastic bottom on it. See if I can find what's floating around in there. I think it's got the circuit boards underneath, much like the Sharp, but two big ones from memory it was. Nothing there. Yeah, so big fold down circuit boards here. It is kind of a twin board, but it looks like there's two screws on either end and it should come down. Hopefully I can find what's floating around. Out you come. Just a red screw either end. Oh, yeah, there is. Oh, what is that? It's a little brass piece. By the look of it, that must have been related to that other bit. So it must have been sitting under that screw or something. A little... Oh, great. Where did that go? There it is. Just as you get it, it disappears. Yeah, so that... Don't know if that was a little spacer under this screw. Looks like it probably... Oh, God, I cannot hang on to that little thing. It does fit onto it, so I'll just put that with that for now. So here's a big circuit board. Lots of dust in this machine. This is more like what a lot of them used to be like. So what we can do is flip this upside down. This has got better access than the Sharp. Oops, the power supply is coming out there or something. No, it's the RF unit maybe. At least this board folds up nicely out of the way. So I still need to prop it up with something. Maybe use my dummy tape on that heatsink or something. And yeah, this is one of the few videos I've heard making quite a bit of a wow sound with a dodgy capstan belt in it. Often they still work well enough not to cause that. Or you've already replaced them, but that's the one I put in there, which was, I think the original one might have even been broken, and this one's about to, look at that, it's just splitting. Absolute rubbish. So that's why that one wasn't much better, but at least I could test the machine. Just wanted to make sure the heads and stuff are all in good condition before I wasted time and money on a belt kit. Yeah, that stuff's not coming right off. So some stuff is eaten in a bit or stuck to it from the old belt. I'll have to use something a bit more, like a scourer or something on that. Clean up the lid on the motor. And yeah, the pulley here is quite different. Capstan's obviously different to a Sharp. So there are definitely some differences here. I'll just try a bit of scour on that, see if I can get this belt muck off the capstan. Because it's got some pretty horrible stuff stuck to it. Not surprising, this machine probably hasn't been used in a long time. These would be a similar era, I guess, to the Sharp 300 series, so around 83 to 85 era somewhere, I think. I reckon the VH3 would have been about 85 or something. I bought one not working, I think, in the early 90s, and it served me well, that machine. I actually modified it so it had a relay inside that when you turn it on, and a little power point on the back, so you could actually plug a TV into it and turn the TV on and off, because that was infrared remote. I'm not sure if this one had an infrared remote, it may have. Which reminds me of that Sharp 381, I've got the remote somewhere for that, the old corded remote I must look at. Yeah, that's a lot better. I think we got the worst of that muck off there. May have been a little harsh, that scourer, but yeah, it's got all the belt goo off there. There's a little bit of corrosion on the top there. Oh no, there's a little bit of goo left there, I think. Where's my flat blade screwdriver? I think I'm going to have to scrape that off if that is just stuck on there. I don't think that's where the belt sits necessarily, but yeah, it's actually corroded in or something, or left some sort of belt material on the actual flywheel of the capstan. Yeah, there's definitely some patches still on there. It's one of the worst cases I've seen. I mean, you get a bit of black stuff, but this is less some sort of white. Not sure if it's corrosion or just belt material. I'm actually going to have to scrape this thing back a bit, I think, because there's just a layer of stuff on it in some places. Yeah, that should be pretty right. I'll give it another clean. Remove any dust and stuff off it. Feels smooth on the cotton bud, so that's a good sign. So let me see, does this belt kit look right? It does. Can't remember ever using a VBK84 in my life, so it's bound to be for some oddball machine like this. I used to know all the video belt kits almost off by heart because I replaced so many of them, except for some like the rarer beta machines and stuff. But I did do a lot of Sanyo beta machines, I probably knew those ones, but not the Sonys and stuff and some of the other early NECs and oddball machines. Got a little bit of fingerprint stuff on there, so I'll just give that a quick clean again. So that belt's wobbling around a little bit more than it should. It can't be that bad, surely. Might have to actually pull that capstan motor out. I think something doesn't seem quite right there. And yeah, there's a little load belt. I guess I can do that one while I'm underneath the machine. Does that just pull out? Beautiful, it does. So as per usual, clean the pulleys, the motor and the other pulley that runs the Mastercam. Certainly the Mastercam and those two guide gears look very similar to the Sharp. We've got these solenoid type brakes as well, which was a Sharp feature. So I think, yeah, they've definitely had some sort of licensing agreement, which probably would have saved them a lot of development costs. But then they've done all the work to, I guess, develop all the electronics and stuff, so can't see that it was a massive saving. Oh, actually, I've got the capstan loose in there. I might just put the bracket back on that. Save it dropping, give me just one screw, save that dropping down when I flip the machine over again. It actually looks corroded on that mounting post for the bracket, which is odd. Yeah, there's something on there, so that's very strange. I don't know if the belt caused that. So let's see if I can get this capstan motor out so I can inspect the pulley on it. Unfortunately, it's got that big flywheel thing on the other end, unlike the Sharp one, which means I have to pull it out from the top to actually inspect the brass bit. So this is a bit more depth than I thought I was going to be going into this thing. It's actually got like a, they call it circuit board thing to mount the motor, which is an odd thing. It's not, oh yeah, it does have a big lump of some sort of crud on there from the belt. And of course this doesn't unplug this motor, which would have made it easier to do it. Scrape this stuff off somewhere else. I think I'm going to have to scrape that with a screwdriver even. That's, wow, that really is a chunk of something on there. Just in the one spot really. The whole pulley's a little dirty but not too bad. That may need something slightly abrasive like the scourer on it, because the belt has just left so much mess, but I could see the belt seemed to be not running smoothly, sort of the top or bottom of it was going in and out a bit, which it shouldn't do. power in there, see if I can get the rest of that belt off. Really not much access. Does this piece actually come off? No, it's actually weird to have a brass pulley with a big flywheel on it. Maybe that's why this machine was a bit wowie, whereas they normally aren't. That might have something to do with it, but if anything, that should help reduce the wow, I would think, by keeping up the momentum. It's got most of it. I still think there's a little bit of something there. Needs scraping off. Some sort of black belt stuff in the middle here. That's not real good. That's weird. There's still a little bit of a ridge where the stuff was mounted. The lumpy stuff. Yeah, very odd. That won't do your belt much good if you've got lumpy bits and ridges and... Yeah, very interesting. Normally you don't have to clean the... more than just a quick clean with the caps, with the cotton bud on these capstan motors. These old school type. But every machine's different is the problem. But I've got that looking pretty good now. Certainly probably the dirtiest sort of capstan pulley like that I've ever seen. Now I'm going to have to probably use a screwdriver or something just to pull these wires aside. Bit of a messy system putting all the wires around the motor like that, but I guess normally they'd never come out of the machine in its life probably. Certainly not as neat as the way Sharp did it. Or pretty much any manufacturer, so I guess Orion loses a few points there. Yeah, no, not a very common brand in the old days. I don't know if they made anything else. I think the picture tubes you used to see, I think some of the Amstrad CPC 464 or whatever computer monitors had the Orion tubes. I used to pull them out of those to fix colour TVs because the monitors weren't worth anything back then. Now, which way around did that go? That swung back that way, I think, to capture the wires. You can bend it anyway, I guess. I think they may have built the whole monitor for those. They were some oddball monitors with Orion tubes. I wouldn't be surprised the whole thing was made by Orion. I get a feeling one of the other parts, the regulator chips or something, had Orion on it. Could be wrong. Been a long time since I've seen one of those things. I wonder if that was meant to be under there. Don't think so. Okay, so we can put our capstan belt on. I might as well, while I'm up here now again, unscrew the real motor, which I assume is just going to drop down in there. So we can get that out of the way and almost get the idler out, but not quite. Yeah, it's falling out here, this thing. Don't know why that decided to come out. It should clip in there. Maybe I left it loose last time. Now that capstan belt should be ready to go. And hopefully it runs a bit smoother. Come on, get in there. Yeah. I'm just going to pull it up to go around the other thing so it slips off. Yeah, it still wobbles around a little bit, but at least I know that's fully clean now. Don't think that needed lubrication, so it should be alright. Yeah, I'll sort of screws, that'd be just that one there, I reckon. Don't think it was anything special, no, just a standard little flat top screw like that. Make sure I tighten them off, which I did. I've done that belt, so yeah, geez, I've got wires going around this reel motor as well, and a bit of foam attaching it, which I'll have to rip to get it out. It should get our idler to drop out. Now, muzzle, this has got a bit of idler material around it, just like any sharp machine would have. Try and clean all that rubber material out of there, and clean off the pulley, which, yeah, this is a little rough like most sharp ones. Must admit, ideally I probably should have got a replacement for that if you can. I think you can get metal replacements. I'm not sure if they ever made a plastic replacement. This is quite grooved. You wouldn't think just running up against a rubber wheel they'd get quite as rough as they do, but they do, and I think that speeds up the demise of the next rubber wheel. I'm not sure if they're the same as the sharp ones. Not much point putting a used plastic one on there, but that is quite grooved. You can sort of see the black stuff in the grooves. Well, I won't put that back right in place because I've got to get the... I guess I need to leave that out. Let's see if I can shut the board without damaging the board with that there. I'll flip it over yet again. There's the idler lying on the ground. Good chance to get in and clean out all the rubber. The fact there's so many little rubber particles means that thing is probably getting... you need to flick the brake off there, and it's still not very... Oh, wait up. I pushed it so far it's actually hit it again, and well, the sharp one doesn't do that. That wants a lube. That wants a lube. So before I change it, I can change the idler tyre. I guess that just peels off. And this is kind of, yeah, rubber particles everywhere, so that's a sign that that thing is pretty bad. That reel motor pulley. Oh, this is so dirty, I might as well just give this a quick clean. They don't normally get that bad. Come on, evaporate. I'll just leave that, it's a bit cool today, so that's not evaporating quickly. We should be able to just flick these little split plastic bits off here. Are they split? Oh, there's the split. So that one didn't look right. Carefully prise these up. Just with a screwdriver or like and work your way around. Something holding that? Shouldn't be, no. It's just, oh, there's a little washer from underneath. We'll put that back on there. That seemed to be catching in the... actually, there's a couple of them. Looks like they've put a couple of little fine shim type washers. Whoops. That'd be right. And they had to stick to the thing and come all the way up. Always got to watch there, there's nothing underneath. Now I've dropped the top one into my hand. But yeah, there's a bit of muck on there I can see. Don't lose that little split washer from the top. And I'll give that a quick clean as well. Since there's actually something brown or black on there. These things seem to move around a bit. So they're just used for braking the thing. Another good chance to clean out any bits of rubber and stuff off that idler. I'll just put a bit of that on a cotton bud and just smear a little bit on there. We should be able to just drop this back on with this little washer. Putting the washer on as we go. Or at least getting it in position. Oh, come on. You should push it down with your fingernail and the screwdriver at the same time. Still a little noisy. Would have expected that to be a bit more quiet. bad as that. Yeah, not perfect by any means. Just while I'm here, give those pulleys a clean as well. And we can put our little, put the new one on, not the old one. Counter, oh not counter belt, but real censored belt. That sounds a bit noisy too. Okay, maybe we won't put that on just yet. Well, that's a little tiny washer, that one. And there's that split. Might need a tiny little screwdriver to get that off. That's probably not small enough really, but to start. Come on. Oh, that's a magnet. And there you can see the two hall sensors, bit of dust on them too, which probably won't have to get rid of. Don't know why it's got two of them, but it does. Again, just get this shaft to clean, because it's got some muck on it. Oh, and it doesn't want to come off. And a little smear of grease on there. Don't want too much. Yeah, I probably should have got that stuck to my finger if I can. Yeah, that's often the easiest way. Just stick it to your finger, lift it up, being very careful obviously that it can't drop somewhere where you can't get it again. Much more silent. I don't think it was ever going to, well, I guess it fast forward or rewind, it probably could run at that much of a noise, at that much of a speed to be noisy. So you sort of think, oh, it's not really going to matter, but it might. Now we can put our idler, all the metho should have dried off that. Put the idler back in, we'll put the tyre on first. Making sure that this one doesn't seem to want to go in the slot properly, which is odd. See, that idler is not as wide as a Sharp. I'm sure the VH3 used an idler the same as a Sharp, a 608, Video Tyre 608 or whatever they were. VT 608 I think was the Wagner part number anyway, and everyone had something similar. But yeah, this is not as wide by the look of it, so it is actually different. Pretty sure that's always... Where's that? It's in the rubbish bin, I guess. The Sharp 381 I did. I had a feeling I swapped the tyre off the other machine. Oh no, it is the same. No, it's just my memory's bad. I thought these tyres were a little wider. I guess I should put a slight bit of grease under that as well. Just where it swings side to side there. Doesn't hurt to put a little bit there. Maybe even a little bit under there. Just where it scrapes around on the metal a bit. Obviously making sure you don't get any on the actual idler, although I didn't do this other reel yet, did I? So the tension band's marked there with the red stuff, so I think I'll just put that right back where it was. You can mark them if there isn't anything there. Now get this little spring off. May not even need to get that little spring off. But yeah, make sure you know where it was if you don't have a back tension tape, which, oh, where did that go? That just shot off, I think. Damn it. That one really escaped. Don't think it went in the machine, I think it went outside, so that's, I'll have to find a replacement for that. Have to pinch one out of another machine or something. Oh, actually I should have given that a quick clean on the thing there. And doesn't have to look at the inside of these brake bands. Often they have dust and stuff squashed in there, which this one does a bit. Just rub your finger along and brush that off. And the other thing we definitely need to do is more idler dust in there. It's a rubber. That brake's rather dirty too. other little brake pad down in here, which has sort of got some black, I assume more idler particles on it, and a bit on the front, so I'll just try and rub them off and clean out the rest of the muck in here. That's pretty good, I think. And yeah, put a bit of grease on there, not too much. Now I did have a kit of those plastic little split washer things for exactly situations like this where they either break or you lose them, but I can't for the life of me remember if I've still got it or where it is. I'll have to look in some of my parts drawers. And yeah, I'll just set this exactly back where it was, this brake band. Good thing I did hold it in place, because the bit of lacquer stuff on the actual thing is broken off now. Probably should remove that and get rid of it out of the machine. And that's right, yes, I just got to put a thing on there. Keep that at the back of my mind. While I go and put this with the wheel motor, I can probably almost lift up without flipping the machine over yet another time. Where's that bit of foam? That tells you where it went. Yep. Screw holes are about right. That's why I have a magnetic screwdriver. Almost as good as a third hand. But not quite. That's got it. Yeah, make sure it's safe. Let's drop the board back down. There's a spring here for it. Get that refitted. I think that's all the belts. Oh, we've got a pinch roller here somewhere. Bags within bags. Oh, they probably done that, but anyway. See if a 59 pinch roller fits. I've still got to do the lamp as well. And we're going to clean the capstan, that's very dirty in this one. God, that belt, that pinch roller is so old it's gone white. Shows how long that's been in stock for. Usually a bad sign with the rubber when it's starting to go a white colour. But I think that'll clean up alright, at least it's completely intact. It should just rub off with a bit of luck, but we'll see when the metho dries out whether it has. Don't think it's a big problem, but could just be a reaction with a plastic bag it was in too. But these must be getting pretty old now. Especially these, since they're used in the, like this Sharp 300 series, and I think an early Akai, the really early Akai VS, maybe the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or whatever they were, those weird looking machines. I think that is going to dry out alright, but we'll soon find out, I guess. But we can't really be too picky about new parts these days, because we're lucky to get them at all. Where'd I put that longer screwdriver over the other side? I'll get this lamp changed. Sick of looking at that dodgy bit of stuff hanging there. couple of pads there, and the other ones are taken by the dew sensor or something. So it's really just a matter of, normally you wouldn't have all this rubbish here. That was just where I patched in another globe. Actually, oh yeah, get rid of that tape. I want to save that globe because it's good for something else, but yeah, I've just soldered that on, so I'll just cut the ends off there, chuck the old lamp wires away, and you just got to thread these. This is a bit different. Ooh, so I'm pulling the leads off now. I think that's just how it is. I want to poke these back through here. Definitely different to the sharp mounting one, but this was just a little tiny 6-volt globe, I think. I think there's a 5-volt or something, these SL50 ones. Okay, just realised the memory card had run out. So I've just got the pinch roller in and the lamp just threaded through and soldered in. So I've got to find a little plastic clip for that thing. Upper belt mounted. All the belts are in now. Idler done. Both of these lubricated and that lubricated. Still got to clean the capstan and all the tape path. A little bit of dust and stuff here and there that I haven't managed to brush out. So these tape guides will need a bit of a lube. The grease there feels pretty sticky and horrible. There's actually a bit of hair and stuff under there. Ooh, look at that. So I think this machine's been left around for a while. I'll see if I can find those clips. Okay, I found a little second-hand one that's the wrong size, but that'll have to do for now. I think I've got everything else. I'm going to screw this circuit board down, everything under there. Just screw this circuit board back into place for its own safety. I don't think I should need to get access under the board again, but you never know. Assuming everything works, I shouldn't. And then I can just give this thing a clean up. But I'll have to... I can't remember if I've still got the actual kit of those washers somewhere. I had a feeling I kept it, but I can't remember where I last saw it, let alone last time I used it. So I'll have to keep an eye out for that, or see if they're available. Again, I'll just keep an eye out in another old machine. I've got plenty of old videos I've got to look at. If any of those aren't repairable, I can probably pinch one out of that. So I'll give the heads a clean. This one's got a lot more muck on the upper drum. Sort of streaks of tape stuff everywhere, which is the more normal thing with these. You find yourself spending a bit of work to get all the bits of tape oxide off the upper drum. But from memory, this gave quite a good pitch of this machine. It was better than the Sharp 381, I think. Don't know if that machine's working 100%, but it doesn't seem to give the nicest picture. Not as good as I seem to remember they should give. Not that they were ever the greatest things on earth. But again, being very careful when you're working around the head part, because you've got to press quite hard on these upper drums to get this stuff off. Make sure you don't go anywhere near the actual head itself. You keep the cotton bud very disciplined where it's going, so you don't snap the heads off. Amazing, quite a amount of dust on that thing actually too. I don't know if I tried brushing that off. It probably needs wiping off. And we'll just do all these guide arms and stuff. Rollers and everything, just get them all gone over and clean the worst of them. Usually these aren't too bad, but there'll be a bit of dust and stuff on them at a minimum. Don't tend to get tape oxide on these in any great quantity. It's mainly the heads and the capstan that seem to get the worst. That actually really sticks on. Audio head in most of these old machines, again, didn't have any problems. It only seemed to be the later machines that would get dirty control heads and even audio heads. I don't know what changed in the later machines, but I don't think I ever had particularly much on these early machines on the heads. They always seem to stay really clean. The control and audio head, that is. Not the video heads, of course. Yeah, that's pretty well done that. Get a nice fresh cotton bud and I'll do the actual heads themselves and then the lower drum. Still a few bits on this upper drum I haven't got. Yeah, there's a bit of muck coming off there. You should really be able to get this. And you do find like this one's got a few patches above the actual heads, which is annoying. But this drum should come up nice and shiny. No dirty patches, but this is really being hard to remove some of this stuff. As long as you get the worst of it. But it's nice if you can get it back to perfect shine everywhere. And yeah, it can be a bit annoying when you get patches of it right around the head opening. But again, rotate this drum so that you're always cleaning the lower drum in between the heads. No chance of breaking them then. And yeah, give that lower drum a good clean, because that can cause tension issues if there's muck on that. Especially when you find a dirty machine like this one. I'll have to go over it a few times, give it a good hard rub. Try and get, see, quite a bit of muck came off that. I mean, normally for a customer you'd clean any dust off this sort of thing just for visual appearances, in case they have a look inside the machine. At least looks like you did your job, because for some reason customers think dust is the end of the world, but generally it doesn't cause a lot of problems in anything. But in mechanical stuff it's better to get rid of it if you can, including some of this stuff down here, which is pretty horrible. Stuck in the grease and stuff. And I've got that capstan to do. I'd say I'm probably going to have to use a scour on that. That's got a couple of really crusty bits, black bands on it. And yeah, you can spend hours getting some of this stuff off with a cotton bud. I normally get the worst of it with a scour just quickly. Again, I don't think it really makes much noticeable difference to the playback or anything, but best to get rid of it. Because I've seen some very dirty machines that still seem to operate alright. It certainly could affect the surface of the pinch roller, I would think, if it's got sort of lumps and bumps of hard oxide on there. Can't really help it, but I guess the rubber just pushes in and bends back out again if it's still in good condition. Okay, I think that's about it for this machine. I think I can put the cassette housing back in and give it a test run. I guess I'll just flick the power on and see what it does without the cassette housing. Yeah, we've got a sensor lamp. And it was probably just readjusting a few things where I'd messed around with the belts there, or maybe it always does a real thing on startup. This cassette housing quite dusty, so I'll clean that out a bit. And again, because the customer would have seen that, you'd normally should be a bit careful where I set that. I'll get like some metho on paper towel or something and just clean off the bits I can see. Clean out the actual housing itself, because it tends to get a lot of dust sitting in here. Actual paint's starting to scrape off this one, it's had so much use. Just be careful not to bend that little hook thing that sits in the side of the tape to release the flap. There, it looks a lot nicer with Without that, actually one more thing I've got to do. I was going to do is put a bit of grease on these tape guides. Might even use a screwdriver. And of course, the grease has got to get there. It is. God, that stuff gets around. So it doesn't have to have a little bit round down the side of these as well, just down into the gap. I usually put the screwdriver there and just sort of push it down into the gap so it scrapes the grease off onto the top and gets a little bit down the side as well. Because these are really dried up, and maybe should have even removed the old stuff. It's probably going a little thick on it and sticky on it. I don't think this stuff usually goes sticky. It tends to dry out and just leave a sort of bit of a dry black paste there. Never had to actually go like glue or anything, but sometimes I probably wouldn't have to actually remove it completely. Especially now, like in the old days, it'd still be a bit wet and you'd go over it and not worry about it. But with these old machines that haven't been used for years, you've got to think a bit differently, because some of this stuff's actually so old it's starting to cause problems. Whoops, I just bumped a bit on the drum. Better get that off. So just got to be careful here, you're not putting grease on anything you shouldn't be putting it on. I think it needs a little bit on that head where it slides. I did get a bit on the drum. Not good. Just get another cotton bud and clean that off. It's a little bit on the face of the drum, which is never a good place to have grease, because your tape will stick to that potentially, and if it sticks to the drum, it'll get wrapped right around the drum. I guess I should really do a demo of that at some stage. It's quite impressive. But usually the drum quickly stops and the machine shuts down most of the time, but it will sort of go loop right around if you've got a wet drum, which is why they have the dew sensors. So now, I've got to work out how that little, oh yeah, that's where that brass thing probably went down in this bit off the solenoid. How on earth I get that back together? But that can go in later, because we've got to get this oddball mechanism in first. Never quite seen a top loading mech like this one before. Like I say, I'm not sure if I ever worked on one of these machines. I certainly don't remember this. If I did do it, it would have been only one or two. Because yeah, normally once you do a few machines, you remember all the tricks of them. So that goes down there. I think that bit's meant to loop over it. I should have lifted that up first, probably. Another little lever thing down there that you have to lift up to drop over this. We're talking. So I think I can screw that back in. Then I just got to work out how to get that other bit and all its little pieces in there. Always put a couple of screws back in this so it doesn't go anywhere, I think. Going in right. Don't want to cross thread anything. But it's certainly one of the world's weird video machines, I think. They all had weird ways of doing things. But yeah, more things like the Sharp and that were quite good at just being pretty standard. Sharp and National and JVC. But then you get sort of weird ones like these Orions or Fishers or something. That had other ideas, or even the Akai machines were somewhat weirdly put together, especially the electronics in those things. Could get some very weird faults. Probably the Akais were the most unreliable videos as far as electronics went. Here's that last bit that latches it. I think is what we're missing. Is that how that works? Must be, I guess, because it's not latching, so... Of course that piece wants to come across where I don't want it. I wonder if I can poke something in there to stop it. That screwdriver's no good job, but now I can't get my hand back out. I hate it when you can poke your fingers in something and not get them out again. Oh, one thing I forgot too is I forgot to put the little plastic bit back over the idler. So I wonder how this... did that sit through? Whoops. Doesn't help if you drop it. There's a little piece here, a little brass bit, which I assume probably, if we flip that over, that was the bit I found underneath, it would go downwards here into that lever. One thing I might do while I got that off is that looks like it could do with some new grease as well. Clean the old muck off it. This is the worst little piece ever because it wants to escape all the time, and you'll never find another thing like it except out of the same model video. So I think there's a good chance to give this all a clean up of the old grease. Probably should have done it before I put the cassette housing back in, but I wasn't thinking about it then. Yeah, the grease is... oh man, I cannot get my hands back out of there. Your fingers can squeeze in, but not out. So I'll dump a bit of grease down where that little thing goes, and on that lever more generally, where it slides. But yeah, that screwdriver's holding it just in the perfect spot, which is amazing, because normally it would be an absolute mongrel. Now I bumped it, of course, and it moved as I said that. So let's try and get this in without losing it. So the little brass piece with the sort of thin part down, I assume is how it went. That must be act like a spacer for this solenoid arm to slide on. And we've got this other little arm with a screw in it. There must be a way, maybe you just meant to bend it out of the way or something. I can't see that you would want to take that off every time you had to get the cassette housing out. That'd be... oh, and of course the screwdriver I've got sitting there is the one I want to... is the one I need to put the screw in with. That'd be right. Yeah, as soon as you leave that out, thankfully it's hitting against the power cord and just holding in there. Now can I get this to... I think we might have to take the screw out, try and fit this piece in. Man, that is a weird setup. Now that bit's moving. That doesn't actually feel like it wants to fit in there. It's actually sprung on this edge underneath the... There must be another way to jig on these loading mechs out, I think. Okay, so I finally worked this thing out. There's a couple of bits that have to be lined up properly. I might have to do a close-up video or something on that, but geez, what a weird sort of mechanism. Well, I guess we better make sure this does even work, but it's a weird mechanism with the eject part. It turns out it was probably easier to do than I thought. If only I'd done it properly the first time. Yay! Oh, thank God for that. What a crazy design that was. And because I did it the wrong way, it was a fiddly design. So that's a good sign things are working. Ah, that's fast forward. That's right. This has separate cue, review, and fast forward buttons. Hit fast forward or rewind, it goes out of play mode. Play button seemed a little diggy there. Now if I press the fast forward Q review, you'll see the pinch roller disengages and the tension comes back off. Actual mode switch turns. We need to turn that to keep the counter going. Oh, so fingers crossed this thing's going again. But I'm going to have some dinner and then I'll be back. I'll see if I can get this thing back together and finally finished, which would be great. Okay, I'll get rid of this dummy tape. Oh no, what in that lock? That doesn't sound good. Ooh, something's not happy. Ah, I know what it is. That's a good example of when the tape breaks it on, because I forgot to put this back in, which I was meaning to do, and I should have done it while I had the mech out. Yes, if you don't put your little piece back on, I don't know if I can get this in easily. Put your piece back on the real motor in these, you don't have a pin to press the brakes in and release the brakes in the tape. So that probably didn't do the tape much good. Lucky there's only a $1 tip chop tape. Nothing to get too excited about. And that's the problem, once you start fixing these machines you'll ruin a few tapes one way or another. Whether you get grease on them or something crunches them up, or you do something like I just did then. Hopefully it didn't clog the heads up. Yeah, it's scratched into the tape a little bit there. I don't know if you can see that, but over here somewhere there's a bit of scrape marks on it now. Oh, this is having trouble. Maybe you've got to push it hard anyway, but now it'll work. So that was one thing a dummy tape doesn't show you, is that you forgot to do that. Now, hook this up to the TV and set-top box. Let's see if we can get a picture on this. I'll also check the RF output. On this one we've got high and low. Could be 3 or 4. Oh no, it says channel 0 and 1. Oh, that must be the level. So low would be good where I am probably, but then again, so we're on channel 1. Yeah, looks like he's on VHS tape.
It's the one place where a large company can get all of its division top management together, can get all of
So vision search forward and back seems to work alright. Not a bad pause for an old machine.
Who is a Dassault Brigade test pilot here in France. He's a graduate of the...
Got a much better heads and picture in it than that Sharp 381, that's for sure. So it's almost like near this one, the quality of the picture. I think there is tuner there. It's just not tuned in to anything at the moment. Now I need to go around to UHF. See if I can find that set-top box, which I forget where it was, somewhere high up the band I think. Ah, came out in colour and then went black and white. What the actual... There it is. I can't seem to get a good snow-free picture on this TV. I'm wondering if it is the actual TV. Try and record. Got to press play with record to get it to go into record. Now time I better reset.
But I have more. I solved the mystery of the smoking goldfish. At first, I couldn't figure out how they were lighting cigarettes underwater, and then I found this. They were trying to get the habit. Our little Nemo's was swimming in a bag from a leak.
or dropouts on that.
I couldn't figure out how they were lighting.
Could be this tape though. This is the part of the loading mechanism that seems to cause me some grief before. It's this little bit down where that screw is. And to get the eject mechanism out, which has this lever here, that other silver bit, God, it's hard doing this in the camera viewfinder, but that bit that's going up and down at the moment, you can't actually lift the eject mechanism or cassette housing out with that in place. So what I actually took the screw right out thinking that'd be fine, but of course it's got that little brass piece and it's a bit of a pain to get back in, especially because this longer lever here which comes back, you can just see the end of the solenoid there. That's the eject solenoid. This shaft here goes back and forwards on the solenoid, and if you take that screw out it actually tends to swing inwards because it's kind of sprung on something or whatever. But we do need to disengage this bit, so if you just actually just loosen that screw, which of course the camera's right in the way. There's quite a long thread on it. If we loosen that off, we should be able to flick that to one side, making a liar of me. But anyway, this bit actually has a little bent down piece right where the tip of the screwdriver is, and that's what latches the cassette down. And latches the relay, the solenoid, sorry, in place. I think it is. And when we press down on this other bit, that's what actually allows it to latch. I think we're out at the moment. Okay, so deck's out, solenoid's in, and when we press down, then that piece actually at the end here moves, and there goes my lighting, and helps us get, a bit actually moves down, that's pressed by a bit under the cassette thing, or up is it? Yeah, that presses down so this pivots up, and that latches, lets this little metal piece right at its very end down, wherever it is, just down there. It's got a little flat face going down under that metal slide bar, and that lifts this bit up, which I can't do looking in the viewfinder. That lifts up, releases that little bit that's latching the bottom plate in and allows it to slide back. But yeah, to get the actual machine apart and the cassette housing out, top loader, we need to, oh man, I'm almost done this mirror image thing, but yeah, still can't do it without looking at it. Need to loosen this off a bit so that we can get that lever out of the way. I'm hoping I can just slide that, once it's loosened I should be able to slide that to the side like that, out of the little slot in this other bit. It's still not really going far enough to one side. Like, you can just sort of release that, get above there or something. Then we can undo the cassette housing screws. And I probably should have ejected this first. I'll press that solenoid even without power and get that in the ejected position. Get these 4 screws out. 2 there and 2 down on the bottom of the chassis. Come on. Hopefully it won't make a liar of me and I can get this out. Yeah, that's it. I can drag it out that way. That released this little lever here. That's the thing that goes down in under that other thing, and the other end of this, you can see it pivoting there, this bit down in here. That's the bit that the cassette housing presses on, and then it pushes that up and releases that other bit down in here that we just loosened off, this silver bit, or extra shiny silver bit. Everything's silver, I guess, just about. And that allows, when this relay's, or solenoid, I keep calling it a relay, when this solenoid's latched in, I should be able to latch it in by pressing that down, and then as soon as this gets flicked up, that slides along. suspect these parts could actually do a little bit of lubrication. That is a little unwilling to come in, but it needs that other part, I think, to push it down. And I reckon this whole cassette housing, these end bits, possibly could do with a bit of lubrication. You've got this wheel here, which I think that's to sort of slow it. Usually they've got one of those grease things, or yeah, it's like a high viscosity grease or something. It's much like cassette doors in normal cassette players, audio cassette players. When I press it that way, the gear disengages. When I let it go up, it swings back across and engages, and that thing is like a braking mechanism. Basically slows the whole thing down. Didn't do a very good job of getting the dust out of this either. So I might also look at all these pivot points and see if any of those need a lube. Might be worth checking that gear, although when I push it down it disengages. Feels pretty good. That thing should be quite viscous, because that's meant to be to break it. It's amazing how long these things last, even though I'm not sure what's actually in them. Whether they seem to have a lot of greasy stuff oozing out of them, like they've got a viscous grease in there, but I don't know if that's actually the case. Whether it's a grease or some other mechanism in there. And the other option would be to bend this little end piece up slightly, so that when the mechanism comes down, we've got a little piece here which is in the wrong position now. It should be down lower. Almost looks like a little wrench or spanner on the end. That's the bit that latches this pin. So normally that's sitting there somewhere, and it actually takes, this thing has to be pressed down first. This lifts the thing and lets the solenoid go, and then that allows this thing to actually pinch it. And when you eject, that's all it is. You just got to lift that thing. If it will come back down, which it won't. Come on. Can't really grab hold of it. It's on a spring, just a bit annoying. And it's greasy. So that pin locks in. We're in the down position, then that solenoid forces that out, and you can see it just lets the mech go. So that's all it is holding it together. Like so. But you've got to get all these little things to work in the right order, and this thing obviously has to press at the right time. It doesn't look like it's been bent down, so maybe it is. They all seem to move alright. There's this bit under the mechanism that presses on it. I was starting to think that this pin pushing on this thing was what got it to latch, but I thought that can't really be right, because there's no way that can work. So it could be that this silver bit I got needs actually bending down even further as well, so it pushes up sooner. But I suspect these actually don't look like they need greasing. I think this mechanism's pretty good. It's more to do with this mechanism here and that bit that presses on it, and getting that to release. I did put some grease under here, which certainly is helping. I might put a bit more under this bit, and maybe even clean it off, because it looks a bit dirty under there. Looks a bit dirty and even rusty down in here. And there's sort of some dried up grease, I think, so I certainly won't have to lube that anyway. I'm not sure that's the main problem, but slot that in. There's definitely some pretty horrible stuff under that thing. Well, now that screw's been loosened off a bit without taking it out again, because I don't want to try and get that back in, although we've got this blocking it, haven't we? I was going to try and lift this up a bit to see if I could clean under it, but I'm not sure that's going to happen. But yeah, it's definitely sliding to a point where it's actually hitting a rusty spot there, which can't help. So I'll put a bit more grease down in there, just to make sure that this is lubed. especially when there's a bit rusty there. Won't hurt to put some grease on it. I don't think it had a lot on there to start with, but that's all nicely lubed. Looks like it had some up the solenoid end too. There's definitely nothing wrong there. And that lever admittedly almost looks a bit bent over to one side. I don't think that would matter. I think that's more to do with the release. I forget now. And whether any of those bits need lubrication on them, there's been some oil, grease there, and there's something greasy looking, but that's just where the mechanism sits down, so not too sure about that. And the other thing, like I say, we could bend that down. Don't know if we can bend it down that way or that way a bit. I'll just put a little bit more on there. I probably should put some grease so I can see where it had some grease, where that bit latches, because this bit slides under the silver bit and then it drops down to latch it. It does when the screw's in place, and then up we go. So that won't hurt to have some grease on that bit. That probably releases it a little easier. I don't think we really need grease on these other bits, but you could actually, it looks like it may have had some in the slots. What have we got? That sits, yeah, both in that slot and the slot that goes around that, so I might just put a little smear of grease just in that bit, in the actual, doesn't want it on the front faces, even though I'm getting it on the front faces, but just inside it where it slides on that other bit, and same with this other bit here, just where the other bit runs inside it. That's about all I can really think of doing. I guess this bit, this actual lever bit that the housing pressed down on, looks like it's been greased at some stage too. It's got some dried up grease on it, which I guess it's pressing on the cassette housing, so, or the cassette housing's pressing on it. So it probably wouldn't hurt to put a little bit, a tiny bit of grease on there as well, since the surfaces are two metal ones that meet and rub. So now we just got to basically hold that up as we get it in there, and we're going to try and get this gear underneath at the same time. That slots through this other bit that sticks up like two little fingers, and we've got to get it down. It just naturally falls roughly where it's got to go, and I've got to slide that silver thing back out of the way as that comes down, or get it above it maybe. Probably need to start putting screws back in. Even with a couple of screws I should be able to test this once I get that silver bit re-engaged. So the silver bit we've been fiddling with before down here, where is it, down in here? Does that need more light? Probably does. Oh, the deck's in the way a bit now, isn't it? That's what the problem is. Nothing will gauge at the moment because we can't latch this thing until I slide that across, which I've got to do is look from the side, push it down slightly. Oh, come on. Oh, that's right. It's a catch-22 in a way. That's right. You've actually got to slide it sideways and lift the other lever up. I guess pressing down on the cassette housing would do the same. Okay, now we're in, the two levers are engaged, one inside the other, and something's still not right. That was the other bit, that's right. Of course, this other silly thing, that bit that with a little spanner shaped thing that actually hooks it, of course that lifts itself upwards. So you've got to push that down and push this other, there's another little hook under there which doesn't want to move, of course. Do I have to press the solenoid or something? I've got to get that under the other hook, so it is a bit of a mess under the other, that only pushes the hook further in. So it looks like we've got to undo this again. I forgot about that bit. It's kind of a three-handed job to get this thing back together. Can I slide that back enough and just, if I pull that hook slightly forward, oh that's probably why it was bent before, I reckon. And I guess because of this thing. So I'll unscrew the other end. Probably not a good idea to put that in, I was forgetting about that hook. So if we slide it forward a bit, we've got to get that hook under. The other hook, one's hooked on the silver bit. So there's two pieces to get in at once here. Then I want to get a screw in so that nothing disengages again. Okay, now we're talking. I might get the other side in just so it's aligned properly. Now we're working, and that feels a bit, oh, I can eject it by pressing the solenoid. Yeah, that definitely is more gentle to put in, much better. Shouldn't have to ram it home. Probably more to do with bending things and lubricating them, but that feels how they should feel. I think I may have bent that slightly out of whack. It may have been like that already. I haven't really used this machine much, but it's possible with all my fiddling around I bent that silver out a bit. So that's quite a complicated mech to get in and out. Out not so much, but back in again. And I haven't actually even tightened up that screw yet, so I better not forget to do that. Our little screw down the hole here. So that's even working surprisingly with that being able to flex more than it should. Do that nice and tight. And supply power again. Twang. With the tape in, it still does need a little bit more force. Yeah, that's okay. You've got the door and stuff, I guess, fighting back, but yeah, that's a normal amount of force. It's a little bit more than without the tape. Possibly if the reels are, I guess, lined up a bit differently, you might have to put in a bit of force into rotating them, I guess. But yeah, the mechanism itself is fine. And we're running out of battery. From another angle, the bits we're talking about, if I can actually manage to get a screwdriver, there's these bits here. It's like two little metal fingers with this little, that's the end of the silver thing on the screw coming out, and you've just got to slide that silver bit across here somewhere so that this other bit can lift up and out. That might be a bit better. So I've got these two metal fingers which have got a bit of black grease on them now. That's the bit on the actual cassette housing, and then this other bit is the end of that silver piece with a screw in it. You've basically got to slide that across so it comes out the end of those two fingers, and then this other piece can lift up and you can get the cassette housing out. So that's one of the pieces that was causing the hassle. You can see the silver thing in the background there with its screw. Right, there's the screw you've got to lose so you can slide it out that way. And then there's another, that other arm, like I said, it was that spanner shaped thing. The other bit is this bit down, there's our silver thing with the screw down there, and there's another piece in here that actually latches the piece that it came out from under the little spanner shaped bit, spanner ended bit that goes the little clip from the cassette housing, and you can sort of see that. If I can get it focused, which I probably can't. You've got this arm piece here that hooks across, it's like a hook. You've got this hook bit, and then this silver lever that goes back up. That's got that little spanner bit with a little pin on the other end of it. It has to go under this hook as you slide it in, otherwise it ain't much good. And yeah, so that's what I had to, it tends to spring upwards, so you've got to push this end of it down and make sure it goes under that hook bit, because that hook only slides the other way, it doesn't really go back this way much. And then you should have your cassette housing fully engaged. And just for the sake of the record, there are a few more red screws in these. I found some in a bag because I left all the cover screws out, so as well as the 2 red screws on the front corners of the board that allowed it to pivot open like I did before. You should actually put a couple back in this back bracket. That's the other part that pivots. But there were actually screws to stop the board pivoting, so if these don't open up, you've got to take these back screws out, or at least I don't think loosening them off actually works. It does have 2 other screws there that pivot and slide a bit. So we had to put those back in. At least I know that's 2 of them, and I've still got 1 left, which I'm not sure where that came from. I don't know if there was another one at the back here or something. I can't see it. Yeah, dust there that wants to be got rid of. Better remove the power because there is 240 volts under this plastic cover, or at least part of it. Primary of the transformer there by the look of it. So I don't know if there was another red screw in this board somewhere. I've completely forgotten because I pulled this apart months ago and I only just got back onto it. But either way, if I'm 1 screw short, not the end of the world. And it's basically these black screws, 5 or so of them, 6 by the look of it. To get the bottom cover back on. And it should just be 2 screws in the top, I think, and 2 in the door, because that's all I've got. And that should be it. And I'll get 1 red screw left over for free, so I'm not sure, unless I can spot that on the top side somewhere. Couldn't see anywhere else that went on that circuit board or anything. Oops, I lost that. It's getting fumbly today. So not many machines had a big plastic bottom on like this, although it does have shielding on the inside, but most machines had a metal bottom cover, I guess, to shield it, especially since these got sat near televisions and stuff. So it's a bit of a different design as well. Get that cord out of the way. But yeah, now I've screwed that back down. Front panel's got all its screws. I wouldn't have taken any of them out. So I'm guessing that red screw came from below somewhere. All the screws are in the back by the look of it. No, I have no idea where I got 1 red screw from. But I'm sure it'll come in handy for some other job. I get a feeling it was something to do with that bottom circuit board, but I couldn't for the life of me see where it came from. Always helps to unplug the socket out of the back that you've put into the RF and stuff, because you won't get the cover back on otherwise. And I've got 2 big black screws for that. And some of these machines, I think you have to put the lid back on. They come in from the back, I think. The lid back on in a particular order, but this, it's like most of them, you can eject them and just fit the lid afterwards anyway. I'm not sure that back's sitting quite right. Sometimes you gotta bang them home. That's better. Just make sure they're fully set down so the holes line up. This top cover needs a bit of a clean by the look of it. Oh, they do have a little tuning tool in here. I did wonder about that. It's always handy, that little tool's for changing your band switches, because I had to do it with my finger before, which wasn't much fun. Quite a good collection of dust in there. And you can actually flick this here for AFT on or off. There's a little switch in there, little black thing. Usually they just automatically operate when you shut the door, but this one you can actually turn it off if you want to with that little bit there. I do actually have the manual for this thing even, so someone kindly kept that with it as well. It's even got the label still on the door. Let's see if this door can go in. I don't know, I don't think that needs to clip on. I might eject it and just see. Some of these doors have little, oops, stuff getting caught up everywhere, have little clips on the front of them. Some just have the 2 screws. Not eject now. Oh yeah, it does actually, it's got little metal, couple of square holes in the front and little metal tabs, so it does need to slot in, but I think it did that alright from the top anyway, because the screw holes seem to line up. When I had the mech shut or in the closed position, they still seem to line up. Some machines will, some won't, so you've got to fiddle around to get these just right. Usually in the ejected position. A bit noisier now, I think. That door, yeah, it's a little loose. Interesting. Doesn't seem quite right. I don't know if they had something in there originally to stop that rattling. Quite a gap there, so someone's had little rubber pieces or something around those bits. Well, I did see a little rubber piece here somewhere that has fallen out of one of the VCRs, so maybe that's what that was for. Just when you think you've got it done, there's always something else. Let's shut the thing. But that does seem a little cruder design. Where did I see it? A little rubber piece. Yeah, that might just fit in. There's only one of them, unfortunately. Let's see, does it fit in there? That probably is what it's designed to do. It's probably meant to be little rubber bits on the end of that mech. Let's see if it makes any difference. It'll probably still rattle at one end a bit. Whoops, that didn't help. So we normally turn the power off while you're working on it, in case you drop that down inside. I'm expecting this screwdriver to be magnetised, but I haven't done this stubby one. So I better get off my butt and do that, so I'm not sticking the screws to it expecting them to stick and they just drop. So because this camera's in the way that I'm using a stubby one anyway. It's rattly that end, but that did cure that end. Still a little noisy. So that might be what that little rubber bit came off. So whether I bumped another one off that mech fiddling around with it is possible. Still, probably with the tape in it, will possibly deaden it down a bit. And the tape itself will make a bit of noise probably too. Yeah, still pretty noisy, but that is the top loader for you. Where am I? Turn the power back on, TV VCR back on. I guess I might as well check if we've still got a picture. Ah, helps if you plug the right lead in because the adapter fell off. Not sure why I haven't got a correct lead on that TV, I must fix that. Yeah, that's a goer. So yeah, really all this needs is a clean up. It should come up half decent, hopefully. I don't know if the silver will come up a bit more silvery with a bit of a clean. It's often hard to tell what colour these machines really are. Some are more silver, more gold, somewhere in between. Depends what's dirt and cigarette smoke and stuff and what's the actual original colour. It's actually taking a little bit of the original paint off it, I think, but not much I can do about that. Certainly a bit of finger grease and stuff on it. It's amazing how much photo comes off these sometimes. This one's pretty dirty, pretty baked on, as you can see. I guess. Still a bit on the tape bill that does want to come off. But that's already looking quite a bit better. Oh, that's coming off now. Sometimes you need to leave the cleaner on for a while just to soak. Dirty as. That's all looking much more consistently one colour. Still a bit to go. There's always the annoying bits in these slots, and there's bits. And it's actually a bit of a crack in this door by the look of it. When I press on that little, what looks like a scratch, it's actually a crack. Be a bit careful. I could really remove that thing, it would make it look a bit nicer, because that's got a bit bubbly underneath and a bit opaque, translucent, whatever the word is. More translucent than opaque, I think. Oh, if I can get that one bit of dirt out there, there it goes. That already looks a ton better.